Hello everybody and welcome to this tutorial on the SimBrief. This is where we're going to create our flight plan and I'm going to walk you through exactly how to do that and what you need to know regarding your flight plan. This is not going to get into detail about putting this into an aircraft or anything like that. This is purely just on how to create it and what that looks like in SimBrief. Now, SimBrief was bought by Navigraph a year or two ago, and since then there's been some changes. But recently, there was a huge update in February, specifically February 16th, at which time they had a whole new interface for their dispatch system. So, go to simbrief.com and we'll go ahead and get started. Now, I'm already logged into my account. If you don't have an account with Navigraph or SimBrief, you'll need to create one to start off, but once you do that, you'll be good to go. All right, so we're going to select the dispatch drop down and then dispatch system. And it's going to bring up the brand new dispatch system. Now, you may not see any of these latest flight plans or anything like that if you've never created a flight plan. But this is a very important page, and here's why. Okay, so if you look all the way over here to the right-hand side, you'll see where it says Navigraph subscription. Now, you're not required to have a Navigraph subscription to use SimBrief. However, I do highly suggest it if you can afford it. The AIRAC, or the Air Nav data, is very important, especially if you're flying on VATSIM, to be as current as you can have it. Now, for each individual flight simulator, they're going to have a different AIRAC. So Microsoft Flight Simulator 2020 actually has a service that they're subscribed to that you automatically get the latest flight data. Now, X-Plane 12 or X-Plane 11, on the other hand, do not. X-Plane 12, if I recall, is at 21, is using AIRAC 2112. 11, I think it's like 1809 or something like that. So just make sure you have the latest AIRAC cycle, whatever you're going to be using. Make sure you select the right AIRAC before you get started, because that's going to be very important. Okay. All right. So let's jump into the creation of a new flight, shall we? So left-hand side, you'll see some different options for you. We're going to select new flight. Brings you to this page. So this is your briefing page. This is where you're going to create your flight and then go from there. So we're going to start off. We're just going to say we're going to be a Delta flight today, and I'm just going to select 223. No real reason behind that. Just decided to do that. So departure, we're going to fly from Atlanta to Washington Reagan International. Now, got your departure, got your arrival. You can have the alternate auto, which is what I usually do. The big thing here, though, is the departure time. So you can create a plan pretty much whenever you want. The only thing is weather's not going to be accurate if you go too far in advance. What I like to do is about maybe 2 hours before my flight, I'll actually create the plan then and then set my departure time. Like if I wanted to depart, let's say at 1600 Zulu, I could set that and apply, and that's going to try to use the weather that is forecasted for that period of time. It also is important if you decide to pre-file with VATSIM to have the right departure time in there. Because I think VATSIM, it only keeps it on file for 2 hours. So just something to keep in mind there. All right, so aircraft type. So you have a ton of different aircraft you can choose. Everything from the Antonov 225 all the way down to the TBM 900 and everything in between. Now, if we're flying in, let's say, Microsoft Flight Simulator 2020, which is what we'll say we're flying in today, but no harm and no foul. If you want to fly a different simulator, no big deal. It doesn't really matter. This tool doesn't care. So we're going to say we're in the A320 Neo 251. And you can see right when I did that, it went ahead and created the entire plan automatically, including alternate routes and all kind of stuff. And you see that over here on the map page. That's because that's what it needed to, that's the last kind of information it needed: departure, arrival, and then the aircraft types. Really all it needs to create a general profile and plan for your flight. However, you're not done. There's a lot of little details that you need to pay attention to that can make or break your flight plan. So let's move on and get into that. Airframe. So you actually have the option. You can open Airframe Editor, and you can actually create your own aircraft and adjust them as necessary. And that's important if for some reason you're getting a little bit the weight and balance is a little off or something like that. You fly with a virtual airline, and the virtual airline has a specific briefing for you for the aircraft, like whatever it may be, that you can only seat up to 120 people when the default's like 140 or something like that. We can select the fly-by-wire, and that's going to automatically update some information here automatically. You can see that. If you go back to default, you can see it resets all the way back to default, including the cost index, which is kind of like your cruising cost index, which is like, think of it how much power, how's it going to restrict its engines based upon fuel consumption and things like that. So you're not just, going 100% the whole time. You can adjust this to actually adjust how aggressive it's going to be on throttling up and throttling down, so that it try to save as much fuel as possible. So if we go fly-by-wire, it automatically switches it to 10. This has been provided by Sidnov, this version. So there are options where you can get other people's aircraft profiles, and you can actually download them and send them to people as well. So very handy tool that you can actually adjust your airframe there. This is also where you would find any of your saved aircraft as well. Line profile, usually going to leave that at default anyway. Cost index, you have a couple options, CI, M78, and VRC, or LRC. That's going to depend on your airline or country. So CI is what we use here in the United States. Cost index is 10. Descent profile, same. Fuel factor. So this, okay, and you can look at this whole thing, it kind of gives you the option, right? So this gives you the option to increase the amount of fuel the SimBrief will calculate. So, for example, if for some reason your virtual aircraft is burning, like it says, 5% more fuel than what SimBrief plans with the aircraft, try using the fuel factor of P05, so 5% more. So just something to consider if you do start having some problems with that. ATC call sign, default is going to be your airline and your flight number, but you can change it here if you need to. Registration number, this has DAFBW because the fly-by-wire right there. It doesn't really matter. I'm just going to leave that as fine. Tail number, I'm just going to change this to 23 because I can. SoCal, don't have to worry about that. AGLR is fine. All right, here's where it gets a little different. All right, so current AIRAC, you see this right here, right? It's saying I'm in the current AIRAC cycle. However, if I'm flying in, say, a default aircraft in X-Plane 12 and I haven't updated my AIRAC cycle, I need to make sure that my AIRAC cycle actually matches that of the simulator I'm flying in. That's very important because if you don't do that, if you don't update your AIRAC cycle according to whatever's actually loaded in your simulator, your FMS data may not be accurate, and thus you may have waypoints, VORs, approaches, SIDs, stars that are not current and can actually be wrong or not even found in your database. I cannot stress to you enough the importance of making sure the AIRAC cycle is accurate and correct to your flight simulator. Now, I'm going to be on the latest and greatest because, again, I do subscribe to Navigraph. I do get their FMS data for both X-Plane 11 and 12, as well as Microsoft Flight Simulator 2020. So all of that is up to date and accurate. So I'm going to use the most current. OFP layout. So let's talk about this real fast. So this is your flight plan layout. LIDO is kind of your international standard. It's what I use because I'm not part of any airline. But let's say you fly for American Airlines Virtual. You have the American Airlines right there. So you can select their actual flight plan like layout. If you fly for Delta, Delta's right there. So you have a lot of options here. Not all in the world. Southwest, KLM, Qatar. I mean, you have British Airways. You got a few here, right? That you can actually use those flight plans, and it looks like the flight plans you would get from those airlines. So really cool there. All right, units, very important. Also very important here. If you're flying an aircraft, for example, that only uses kilograms or only uses pounds, make sure you have those appropriately selected based upon your simulator and your aircraft. I use pounds by default because that's what we use in the United States. That's what I know as a private pilot, so that's what I use if I can. Now, there's sometimes I can't, and I use kilograms instead, but if I can, I use pounds. Flight maps, I'm going to select none. I don't want to see any flight maps in my plan, but you can do everything from detailed, route only, simple, none. And that's just your maps, stuff like this. Taxi out, taxi in. So this is the fuel is going to give you for taxiing out and taxiing in minutes. So most cases, this is going to be plenty. 20 minutes out, 8 minutes in, that's usually going to be just fine. However, if you're flying on VATSIM and it's an event night, let's say JFK or Atlanta, and there's 50 planes on the ground, well, you might want to increase this to something like 45 minutes or even an hour, because it might take you that long from starting your engines to actually taking off. So be wary of that right there. All right, contingency fuel. So this is extra fuel, not your reserves. This is contingency in case you need just that little bit of extra, whether it's for diverting or whatever it may be. You have automatic, which will automatically give it to you. I use 3% or 15 minutes, and I usually always have plenty of fuel. Reserves, so the FAA does have requirements. You can say FAA auto, domestic, flag, etc. I just select 45 minutes because I know if you're an IFR flight, you have to have 45 minutes. Now, I don't know if that's the same for commercial or whatever, but this amount of fuel, basically an hour extra fuel, has always worked out for me. Never ran out of fuel. Always had enough fuel, even with heavy headwinds. So alternates count. You can have more than one alternate if you want. One's plenty for me, but for some reason you have bad weather up in New York or DC or something, you can always select a second alternate, and it'll plan it for you. So that gives me Philly, but we'll keep one for now. All right, these little check things here. Detailed nav log. Yes, you want that. Trust me, very important, especially if you're trying to figure out if there's duplicate waypoints that have the same names and trying to figure out which one you need to go to. It's very useful, so you can actually see the, what do they call it? The Latin long of the location. ETOPS planning. Yep, keep it. Plan step climbs. Yep, keep it. Runway analysis. You don't really need that. It's basically just giving you kind of an analysis of the runways. If you want it, you can select it on. NOTAMs and FIR NOTAMs, I keep those off as well. This is more of a weather briefing stuff than it is for the flight plan, but you can select it on if you want. All right, moving down. Optional entries. So schedule block time. This is what it's estimating from the time you start your engines to the time you shut your engines down. So that's all the information, all that taxiing, all the startups, pushbacks, everything like that. So that's your schedule block time. Usually it's pretty good, accurate on that, but you can adjust it if you need to. All right, departure runway. You can see we have automatically been selected 08 right. If for some reason you know that's not the case, or you've checked out the ATIS for the airport and they're using 8 rights closed or something, and they're only using 8 left and 9 right and 9 left, you can adjust as necessary to your departure runway. If you're in VATSIM again, you're going to be assigned a runway, and this may change on the fly, but if there's an event going on, be sure to check the event briefing so you can see what runway they're using as well. Arrival runway, same thing on VATSIM. Check out what they're using if they're online, and you can adjust this appropriately to the appropriate one. All right, altitude in feet. So this is auto is usually just fine for longer flights, an hour or more. If you're doing a short hop flight, let's say in a CRJ from Atlanta to let's do Nashville, Tennessee, or from Miami to Tampa, something like that, you may want to adjust your altitude and write in something different. Manually adjust that, and you can say 32,000 feet, something like that, if you wanted to. But for this cases, I'm just going to keep it auto. Extra fuel, if your VA requires you to have a certain amount of extra pounds of fuel on board, you can add it right there. Passengers, so maximum, you see it says auto, none, and full. Auto is going to automatically kind of calculate how many passengers are on there. It's almost every single time it's going to be full, but you can also select full Now, if you're flying for a VA, and let's say your VA, the airplane only has 160 seats, you can just type in 160 for your passengers. Or if you're given a certain number of passengers actually on there, you can adjust that right there. For this sake, I'm just going to say full. All right, weight. So weight in freight. So your freight weight is how much cargo you're taking on board, baggage, or not baggage, but cargo and all that kind of stuff, packages, stuff like that. And automatic, full, and none again. But you also can say how much is actually going to be on board. So let's say that I'm going to take 12,000 pounds of freight on board as well. 0 fuel weight. Usually auto is going to be just fine. But again, if you're in a virtual airline and there's a specific 0 fuel weight of the aircraft, you can type it in right there and you're ready to go. All right, text entries. This is just my pilot ID, stuff like that. That's just something for VATSIM. So it's there. Anyway, all right, so let's talk about the route itself. So AIRAC's very important. You can see it says your route is valid for AIRAC 2302. As you might expect. It's giving me a selected route right here. Now there's suggested routes over here that are going to be slightly different. See that? That's way out of the way. So you can, if you want to, look at a different route. But I'm going to keep the suggested default. I'm good with that. I like it. Now a cool thing to check out here, and we'll do it real fast. There's some buttons right here, right? All these different ones. So you have Flight Aware, Sky Vector, Route Finder, Global Route Database, EDI GLA, Auto Router, and IFPS validation. Now, I'm going to hit Flight Aware, and here's why. It's going to take me to Flight Aware, but you'll see it shows you how frequently the routes, or what routes are frequently flown from Atlanta to DC. And you can see that the Jackie 2, Kellen, Q56, Kiwi, Waves, and CAPS 3 arrival is the most frequently flown. And then some of the other ones are flown too, but less frequently. So that's the most frequently real life flown frequency, 132 times in the last 30 days. So if that's the case, that's the route I'm taking because it's most realistic. All right. If you do adjust this, which you can manually adjust this, let's say I throw in a weird VOR here. I hit the Analyze Route button, it's going to analyze it. You can see it's all jacked up now because it's going back to a VOR in Alabama. But you can see that you can adjust this manually if you want to. You can also find SID star, and it helps you find the SID star, whatever. All right, so there's your routes. Pretty easy to use. If you want to do a manual route, you can just type it in there too if you know the waypoints and stuff you want to use, and analyze the route, and it'll give it to you. All right, so there's other options here. Route Finder, again, if you want to create a specific route, you want to avoid a star or a fix, you want to make sure you include these fixes, you can create those SIDs and stars, or not SIDs, don't create the SIDs and stars, but you're creating a custom route right there. Alternate airports, same thing. If you want to look for a specific type of alternate airport type, you can do there. ETOP scenario, also here for you. Just all kinds of options here. Historical data, if you want to do like a historical flight, maybe during a hurricane or something, you can also pull that in right here too. All right, so we have run through this, run through the gamut, so to speak. We've created we've inputted our information for our flight plan. So the last thing we want to do to create the flight plan is to hit the Generate Flight button. Only do this once you've completed all of the work here. So Generate Flight, it's going to create it for us, and then give it. All right, so here is the new flight plan we have just created. It's given us all the information: flight number, call sign, departure, arrival, alternate aircraft type, departure date, departure time, our estimated arrival time, air time, block time, airframe, initial altitude, so this is 37,000 feet, it's our cruise altitude, our CI index 10, route distance 504 nautical miles, average wind, so this is based upon the cruise winds from the, looks like it's from the west-northwest at 76 knots. Wind component, positive 21, so it's given us some boost in there. ISO deviation, -1. Release numbers 1, AIRAC Cycle 2302, OFP layout, LIDO. Units, pounds, navlog, yes. ETOPS, no. En route fuel burn, estimating 6,085 pounds. Passenger count on board, 174. Empty weight is right there. Estimated weight, or estimated zero fuel weight, right there. Estimated takeoff weight, right there. Estimated landing weight, right there. Block fuel, cargo, payload, max zero fuel weight, max takeoff weight, max landing weight. So you can see we're right there at max landing weight. So we might have to burn some more fuel to get in there. Route, Atlanta, 08 right. Going to be taking off Jackie 2, Kellen, Q56, QE, direct waves, caps, and DC landing on 01. Payload and cargo has been limited by the max landing weight. Look at that. So it limited our cargo and our payload based upon our max landing weight. I'm telling you, guys, this thing is freaking genius. ATC flight plans. This is what gets sent to the ATC. Fine there. Briefing preview. You can look at the what it actually looks like in the format right here. This is what your plan actually looks like. And if this confuses the heck out of you, it's okay. We're not going to cover that today on how to read a flight plan and how to use it, but we're just doing creation right now. But this is your flight plan right here. I'll hide those. So everything's right here. A couple other things we want to talk about real fast. How to download the flight plan and how to pre-file it on your favorite virtual airline or virtual air traffic control network. So flight plan downloads, show details, tons of options here. Depending on what you're flying, you can download the flight plan, place it into the appropriate file, and then boom, you're actually able to just load it right into your FMC. Very useful. Here's X-Plane 12, for example. Very useful thing to do. Yeah, very, very useful. So PMDG, for example, download that and just load it right into a PMDG. Awesome things there. All right, pre-file on the network. We're going to show details here. You have VATSIM, IVAO, Pilot Edge, and POSCON. And all you have to do is hit the pre-file button, and it'll take you to their filing system with all the data transferred over. It's that easy. You can also hit pre-file up here as well, flight plan downloads, and you can click view PDF. So view PDF is actually going to show you, again, your entire flight plan listed here for you. Lots of information, lots of good stuff, all created for you for free. So awesome tool. Very, very cool tool. Well, that about wraps it up. That's how you create your flight plan. I hope this has been helpful. If you have any questions, be sure to leave it in the comments down below. Don't forget to like and subscribe and hit the bell notification icon so you get notified when the next tutorial or live stream begins. And don't forget, guys, you can help support me over on Locals for as little as $2 a month at mnflightclub.locals.com. Thanks again for watching, guys, and I'll see you next time up in the sky.